Before you've said a single word in a meeting, before you've presented your idea or made your case or even introduced yourself, the people in that room have already formed a judgment about you, about whether you're credible, whether you're trustworthy, whether you belong there. It all happens in about 3 seconds. Malcolm Gladwell wrote an entire book about this. And once you understand how it works, you can make it work for you. Let's talk about thin slicing. What the heck is it? Welcome to Peak Performance Mindset. I'm Megan DeVito. I'm a performance mindset coach, a swim coach, and somebody who believes that your mental game drives everything. So, thin slicing. Malcolm Gladwell talks about this in his book, Blink. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you go find it. The core idea is that our brains are incredibly good at making very accurate judgments in a very tiny window of time. Like shockingly accurate, and we don't understand why or how we know things. It's based on almost no information. And what makes it really fascinating from an executive presence standpoint is that most of these snap judgments aren't happening from your conscious brain. They're subconscious thoughts or just hints on body language, posture, facial expression, energy, even. The stuff that people aren't even aware that they're communicating, the stuff that you aren't aware that you're communicating. So when I talk about executive presence, and if you've seen the episode that I created on what it actually is and why you lose it when the pressure gets high, you know that I define it as your ability to access your best self when the stakes are high. Thin slicing is the mechanism. It's how the room decides whether you have it or you don't. And it happens before you've ever said a word. Here's a real world example. And this is from teaching, but I want you to hear how this translates directly into the boardroom. Before I was a coach, I was a teacher. I used to tell my students, if you want to know if somebody is paying attention to you, you look at where their knees are pointing, not their eyes, their knees. Because if their eyes are on you, but their knees are turned toward the door, they're not listening to you. They're focused over there. Their body told you before their face did. You guys, this is happening in every meeting you're in. People's bodies are telling the room exactly where their attention is, whose idea they believe in, who they trust, whether they feel safe or threatened. And most of the time, the person broadcasting these signals has no idea that they're doing it. Think about your own habits. In your last big meeting, were you leaning in or were you leaning back? Maybe like this. Were your arms crossed or were they open? Did you have steady eye contact or were you looking around the room, trying to find validation? Here's the thing. You might be the most qualified person in that room. And if your body is saying, I'm not really sure I belong here, the room is going to believe your body before they believe your resume. That's thin slicing working against you. Bill tells a story in Blink that's actually really tragic. And I want to share it because it's the most powerful example of what happens when these signals get misread. He writes about a man from Guinea who was shot and killed outside of his apartment building in New York City. And what Gladwell unpacks in the book is how thin slicing went catastrophically wrong. The officers were in this really high stakes, high adrenaline threat state. They thought the guy had a gun. He didn't. And they misread the movements that this man made and what he was actually doing. He was reaching for his wallet. And what they saw was, because they had a dysregulated nervous system in that moment, was something dangerous. They thought he was reaching for a gun. He didn't have a gun. The result was devastating. The man was killed. And I'm not telling you that story to go to dark places. I'm telling you that because Gladwell's deeper point is this. Thin slicing is absolutely real. It's powerful and it's also fallible. When somebody's dysregulated, when they're in fight or flight, they're stressed, they're running on cortisol in survival mode, their read of the cues become distorted and they stop seeing what's actually there. They start seeing what their fear tells them to see. Now, bring that into a business context. The executive who walks into a high stakes negotiation, already dysregulated, is misreading the entire room. And the executive who hasn't regulated their own nervous system first is giving the room confused, anxious signals to read. And the room is going to misread them too, because they're doing what their brain is doing. Do you see how this all connects? Here's the good news. If thin slicing is happening, whether you want it to or not, and it is, then you have more control over the outcome than you think because you can train what you broadcast. Here's what actually registers as credible for a thin slicing read. First, posture that takes up space. Open, upright, shoulders back, not aggressive, just present. Second, eye contact that is steady and intentional, not scanning the room to make sure everybody's paying attention or try to figure out what they're thinking about you. When you can look at someone directly and comfortably, you tell them, I'm not afraid to be seen. And third, a facial expression that's relaxed and open. If you have a tight jaw and a furrowed brow and a closed mouth, those broadcast threat, even when you don't mean to show people that you feel nervous or threatened. And here's what I really, really want you to understand. This isn't about faking it or putting on a big performance. When you've taken the 2 minutes before you walk in to breathe, to get your posture right, to settle your nervous system, you don't have to perform openness because you are actually open. Your body naturally broadcasts that because your nervous system is actually experiencing it. Executive presence isn't a front or a fake. It is the difference between your best self and your dysregulated, pressure hijacked version that shows up in a hot mess inside their head. And your body is the first thing that tells the room which one of you showed up. In my episode on executive presence, I talk about the 5 pillars for how you can build your executive presence. Pillar 4 is about visibility. It's about getting comfortable being seen, taking up space, and letting yourself be heard. And thin slicing is exactly why that pillar matters. Because if you are the high performer who hides, who shrinks, who rolls into the ball, who waits to be recognized, who can't look anybody in the eye in the meeting, thin slice is happening all around the room. They're making their call based on what you're giving them. And you can be the most brilliant person in the room and still lose it before you open your mouth. So here's my question for you. What is your body currently broadcasting? Does your physical presence match the leader who you actually are? That episode's linked right here. Watch it next. It will put everything that we talked about today into a complete framework. And if you want to know specifically where your executive presence breaks down under pressure, I have a free performance audit in the description below. It's 45 minutes. It doesn't cost you a dime. It shows you exactly where your biggest leak is and what you need to work on first. So until next time, remember, pressure isn't the problem. Your untrained mindset is.